What's going on, good people? Welcome into episode 2 of Real Spill, where the truth wins. It's your boy, Scott Proctor, and I'm joined by my guy, the Book of Ellis. He covers the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer, Ellis L. Williams. L, how we doing, my man?
Scotty Bands, it's great to see you as usual. We got some real spill to give to y'all. Let's get at it.
That's a fact, my guy. It's been a crazy week in the NFL. Let's hop right into things with bump and run, how we like to start the show. Let's start here, man. The Buffalo Bills overcame a 20-3 deficit to beat the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. We talked about that a little bit last week, how excited we were for that matchup. But was that comeback more about the Bills or the Ravens collapse? What do you think?
What a finish, right?
What a game.
What a game.
Crazy. That was what we all wanted, to be honest with you.
Exactly. Lamar keeps doing these video game stuff. Like, when it can't even happen in a video game, you're like, wait, what? Pat Mahomes did it too. We'll get there. Let me answer the question, though. I think this is more about the Bills' comeback. You have to find a way to this league is becoming, we talked about in the first show, these comebacks, nothing's safe, right?
Right.
So you being able to be high octane, always have answers when you don't know the questions to the test. Be Josh Allen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, the Ravens had a chance to get that 2-point conversion, and it failed. And that's a lot of times what this league comes down to, man. The margin for error seems thinner than it's been for a while now in this first 4 games of the season.
100%. Obviously, that was a huge win for the Bills. I believe they lead the league in point differential like they did for most of the year last year. So a lot of their games, they're either most of the time, they're just blowing teams out. They haven't really had a close win, particularly in the regular season over the last couple of years. So I think that was big for them. But I'm a little bit worried about the Ravens. Obviously, they blew the big lead late to Miami a few weeks ago. They blew a big lead 20-3 at home to Buffalo. Obviously, those are two good quarterbacks, Tua and Josh Allen. Obviously, Josh Allen's in a different, kind of tier. But that worries me. And that falls a little bit on Lamar, too. As much as we love him, you got to stop the bleeding when you're up 35-14, when you're up 20-3 and put together another late drive. But let's go on to another pretty big matchup. Actually, wasn't really big heading into the weekend, but it turned out to be one. The Jets scored 14 in the fourth to beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh. But what do you think was the bigger story coming out of that game? Is it the Jets at 2-2 with Zach Wilson now back in the fold, or is it the beginning of the Kenny Pickett era in Pittsburgh, do you think?
This game was fascinating to go back and look at. And to answer your question first, it's Kenny Pickett. The young man looked good, and I know no one's going to believe you.
As good as you can look throwing 3 interceptions, he did. But I completely agree with you, though. He did. If you look at the box score, that might be misleading, but he did look good.
Exactly. He had 2 just on-the-money throws down the field to Chase Claypool, took that one right on the chin that set up his second rushing touchdown, I believe. Yeah. I think only one of the interceptions is on him. One I would put on the other player, and then that last desperation stuff happens.
Right.
He looked the part, but it's like Tua, like new scheme, new quarterback. He's going to have the advantage for a little bit here. Let's revisit Kenny Pickett in December and see how things are going. Definitely. But as for Zach Wilson, who is not a rookie, he once again, this offense regresses when this passing offense regresses when Zach Wilson enters the game still.
For sure. We disagree a little bit there. I think obviously for the first 3 quarters, it looked ugly. It looked ugly for Zach Wilson and that Jets offense. But in that fourth quarter, he turned it on. I believe this is his fourth quarter numbers. He was 10-12, 128 yards. Obviously, with the touchdown late to come back, a 94 QBR in the fourth quarter. I mean, he was money again late in that game when they needed him. Coming back from behind in Pittsburgh, I thought that said a lot for his first game back this season, coming off that knee injury that he suffered in the preseason. So I'm actually a bit encouraged out of what I've seen out of Zach Wilson. But you're right, though. The story is Kenny Pickett, that era beginning in Pittsburgh. That's a huge deal, man. But
and I'm going to keep my eyes on Wilson here because one of 2 things is happening here, right? He's either shaking the rust off and going to build off that fourth quarter, or a dead clock is right twice a day, Scotty Bands. We're going to find out.
Hey, both are equally as possible. I got to be honest. They're both equally as possible. We will see. I think the Jets and obviously the Steelers will be fascinating to watch here down the stretch, man. But let's move on to the big spill, man. From before we get into a team that you're locked in with, is anybody in the Carolina Panthers. Let's talk about a team that you were very familiar with before arriving, obviously in Charlotte, and that's the Cleveland Browns when you were covering the Browns out there in Cleveland, man. They allowed obviously a late comeback on Sunday in Atlanta to fall to 2-2 on the season. They're tied atop the AFC North with the Ravens and obviously the Bengals. But do you think Jacoby Brissett can kind of keep this thing afloat before Deshaun Watson's inevitable Cleveland debut? And do you envision this team as a playoff team at season's end?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of that question, can they stay afloat? If afloat is 500, then I think yes. You've seen this team really be in close games, at least 3 of the 4 off the top of my head. I mean, obviously they needed a 57-yard field goal by a rookie to beat Carolina in week 1, and then everyone knows this: the Browns, had a 99.9% chance of winning, according to ESPN probability, until the Jets scored 14 points in 90 seconds and lose that game. And then this close one, this game against the Falcons, Marcus Mariota completed 7 passes, if I'm remembering that stat correctly.
I believe that's absolutely correct. I believe it was 7-19, which again isn't great if you're the Browns.
So you tell me the Browns lose that football game. So Jacoby Brissett turned the ball over. He was 1 of 9 throwing to Amari Cooper. Those are the things that need to improve. I think this team stays right around 500. Deshaun comes back. To answer the second part of your question, I do not think they're a playoff team. What this year in Cleveland eventually is going to end up looking like is a trial run for what will ultimately be next season when the expectations are at its highest.
No doubt. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you highlighted some of it. The Browns this season have lost to Joe Flacco and Marcus Mariota, who completed 7 passes. They've beaten Baker Mayfield, who we're going to talk about a little bit later, and Mitch Trubisky, who has since been benched. That's not great. And not to mention the fact that they have a pretty tough schedule. I mean, we'll just take a look at it here. I think RJ can throw it on the screen for us here. Obviously, they got the Chargers this week, which, they're probably going to be slight underdogs. They have the Patriots the following week.
Okay.
They go on a brutal 6-game stretch. The Ravens, the Bengals, at Miami, at Buffalo, at home for the Buccaneers before they get a little bit of a break with the Texans, which I believe will be Deshaun Watson's likely his first start. So it's tough sledding. And not only are they in a tough division where I like the Ravens certainly ahead of them, I like the Bengals certainly ahead of them, even, with them struggling a little bit to start the season. And obviously there's going to be some contenders for that last wild card spot in the AFC West, of course, and probably in the AFC East as well. I think the Dolphins and Bills both get in. So it's going to be tough sledding for them, and it's not looking great in Cleveland. But I want to ask you this question, too. Mm-hmm. Before we get into Baker, do you believe the Browns are a little bit vindicated with their decision with how Baker, particularly how bad Baker has looked in Carolina through 4 weeks? Is that a possibility?
So the people who I think are the only people still emotional about this are the ones with ties of the Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma who they just want to see him succeed no matter what. Because I will break that down in this sense. None of it is really related, right? Like the Browns were going to upgrade at quarterback if they got the opportunity to. They were going to start Baker Mayfield if they couldn't upgrade at quarterback. And then once they upgraded at quarterback, they had to get Baker Mayfield off their team. Yeah. So the vindication is like, here's what I'll answer this question this way. They are vindicated from not paying him $30 million a year or signing him to an extension. That they clearly looked like the right decision to make based on what we've seen Baker Mayfield do in Carolina for 4 games. Edit out all that first stuff.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that would have been the worst case scenario.
Exactly.
On the book for Baker Mayfield for another season or even beyond, for $30 million a year or something like that. So, I mean, obviously it's not looking great right now, but obviously Deshaun Watson has his off the field situations and stuff as well. But I do believe once he gets a full season under his belt, next season in particular, I think the Browns are going to be a team to watch for sure, man. But
100%.
From a team that you used to be very familiar with and locked in with every day, let's move on to a team that you are, in my opinion, the voice of, and that's the Carolina Panthers. We're going to move on to our On the Prowl section. Talk about Sunday. The Panthers are outscored 23-6 in the second half. They lose 26-16 to the Arizona Cardinals to fall to 1-3. The offense was stuck in the mud, to say the least. Once again, the defense looked good for 3 quarters. We texted a little bit in between. Obviously, Frankie Louvu was making some plays out there for Carolina defensively. I know you've seen this stat thrown around. The Panthers are now 1-26 when opponents score at least 17 points under rule, including 24 straight losses, man. Yep. That's pretty sickening if you're a Panthers fan. But talk to me about what you took away from Sunday's loss and even, what you might have took away from Wednesday's press conference with the Panthers.
Yeah, I think first of all, Sunday was a disaster. Frankly, it went awful for the entire Panthers offense. There really is no bright spot. They scored their last drive of the game, but that's, garbage time. The game was out of reach. This team really just botched all of its opportunities. Multiple times in the first half, they were moving into scoring position. The first time, Panthers tight end Tommy Trumbull is crossing the middle, and Baker Mayfield puts it on him, and he just drops it. That's at least 3 points. That's a first down if he catches it, and then they could gain no yards, and it would still have been a field goal most likely. Yep. And then the reverse fumble that is just, tough to explain, right? It's just like
that play was probably the Panthers season in a nutshell to this point, I would say.
DJ Moore scores that if they just execute the exchange. There's nobody on that right end.
Yeah.
So I just detailed two plays that I'm confident would have at worst got 10 points for the Panthers before halftime. So we're talking about rather than a 10-3 halftime score, it's 20-3. I don't know, man. That's a lot of football to still play, but that's how close all of this actually is. So I will say that as bad as it all looked, the offense is not as far away as the data suggests.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield has been here before. He said that today in his presser, saying,
"Yep,
I've been in this position before when I have to bounce back. I have seen him bounce back. I don't know if it will happen just because all of this still is so new to him and the schedule is so tough. 49ers, Rams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the next three. This is not the time to try and figure your offense out.
Yeah, or sulk either.
Exactly.
The offense just needs to get rolling. Obviously, they're the only NFL team, I'm sure you know this, the only NFL team to not gain 300 total yards in a game this season. And I think another issue that needs to be addressed, I don't even know if it can because it might just be a physical issue, but Baker has the most passes batted down this season with 11.
Yeah.
On Sunday, obviously, he had 3 turnovers, 5 passes batted down just in that game alone. He's only completing 54% of his passes. Obviously, we talked about before the show, Stephen A. Smith is on national television.
Going crazy.
Clowning him. Going crazy. Over on FS1 going crazy on Baker. Yep. So, obviously, the pressure is mounting on him. But I want to ask it this way, and obviously, Matt Rule is certainly on the hottest of hot seats when it comes to NFL coaches. Who do you think is kind of under more pressure, in more heat at this moment, Baker or Rule?
Man, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think it is completely equal. And I was saying this before the season started. These two need each other. This has to work for both of them, or Matt Rule likely will not be in Carolina / the NFL, and Baker Mayfield would have to then accept backup jobs next season because he's playing on an expiring deal. So my answer really remains the same as it did in the preseason. These two need each other, and for the sake of their NFL livelihoods, they better figure this out quickly.
No doubt.
Together.
It's going to take a team effort for sure. Right. And obviously, the Panthers have the 49ers this weekend. Just quickly before we get up out of here, what do you envision for that matchup? How do you think that's going to play out?
Right. So that defensive line is frightening. Nick Bosa, say less. In 2019, the 49ers embarrassed the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield on Monday Night Football. The game was over before halftime. Nick Bosa had 5 quarterback hits, 3 sacks. Right. I asked Baker about that today, and he said, the roster has changed, but they play their style of ball because they can. And that's code for saying they've got the horses. They've got the athletes to do what they want to do, right? There's not much confusion going on when you're playing the 49ers. They're just going to line up and beat you.
Yeah.
With that being said, the Panthers, I think, have an opportunity for 2 reasons. One, Jimmy Garoppolo just is what he is. That's not a compliment. It's not a slight. You just know what you're going to get in Jimmy, right? Second, you're facing a team coming off an emotional victory, a win in a division opponent in primetime TV. They're traveling cross country, right? This might be a place where they kind of just are overlooking the Panthers, and Carolina can find a way to steal one when it desperately needs to.
I got it. Yeah, I can see it for sure. I expect the 49ers to win. But yeah, again, with Jimmy G being such a wild card and the Panthers defense kind of showing a penchant for taking the ball away, I could see it. I can see an upset. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me.
And Scott, real quick here, it doesn't get any easier for Carolina. Today, on Wednesday, the Panthers put safety Jeremy Chin on IR with a hamstring injury. He will be out the next 4 weeks.
That's tough. I mean, I would argue he's maybe their best defensive player,
right?
Maybe one of their best players on the entire roster. So that's a huge blow. A huge blow. But we'll move on. Move on to nickel and dime. Talk about the previous week. Who wasn't even worth a nickel and who was at 10 last week? Ellis, talk to me about your dime from week.
Bruh, I got a 10, bruh. Let me tell you about this rookie Dameon Pierce down in Houston. Woo! This boy finally had his coming out party. Yep. He has it, right? He has those young running back traits that you look for. The one cut go, the explosiveness. He's not getting caught from behind. I believe he had a long run of 60 or 70 yards, something like
75-yard touchdown.
Boom, exactly.
The Dameon Pierce fantasy owner right here.
See, and this is why we do this. We complete each other's sentences.
Correct.
It's like we went to practice together and had one was running routes and one was throwing at some point. I don't know. It's crazy.
If only,
brother. Dameon Pierce, I tried to trade for him. I didn't know what to do. I texted my former colleague Jonathan Alexander, shout out Jay, who was here covering the Panthers with me last year, is now at the Houston Chronicle covering the Texans. I go, brother, man, is Dameon Pierce that dude? And is he going to start scoring some touchdowns? He goes, he's RB1, and I think the touchdowns are going to come. Yeah. Say less. I hit accept on that trade. We've been good ever since, Scotty Vance.
That's a fact, man. I love that pick. And RJ, our producer here, can vouch. Just today, we did a video on who we believe is the best rookie running back, and obviously Dameon Pierce was my answer. I went on to say that I honestly believe he's a future All-Pro.
I'm going to say it right now. I think Dameon Pierce is a future All-Pro running back. As of right now, I think he's arguably a top 12 or so running back in the NFL. I mean, obviously there's a handful of guys, but you can make the argument. I think so far we've seen through 4 weeks, I think Dameon Pierce is a future star.
I think he's already right now at this moment a top 12-ish running back in the NFL. Obviously, he had his coming out party on Sunday, but even before that, when he played the Bears a couple weeks ago, just tough runs. He's so hard to bring down. And he's so explosive. But I'll get to my dime, man. I really wanted to go your boy Jay Jettis for what he did to Marcus Lattimore and the Saints in London on Sunday. But I'm going to go our first kind of defensive player dime of this series, and that's Max Crosby, man. Max Crosby is one of the best, most underrated players in the entire NFL. He had 2 huge sacks on Sunday in the Raiders' first win of the year, 2 more TFLs, and a huge win. He leads the NFL currently in tackles for loss with 8 this season.
Okay.
And only 2 guys in the entire NFL have more tackles for loss since 2019 than Max Crosby. Those 2 guys are, of course, Aaron Donald and TJ Watt. So Max Crosby is certainly right there in that tier. He's my dime of the week. I'm just going to go ahead here with my nickel real quickly. It's Matthew Stafford. He leads the league currently in interceptions with 6 through 4 games. And obviously, he also led the league in interceptions last year, and they were able to still go on to win the Super Bowl. But that's not really sustainable. And it's looking like he's literally only throwing the ball to Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. I don't think that's sustainable either. You paid Allen Robinson to come to LA and be kind of that second option. And he hasn't really looked like it. I have to put some of that blame on Matthew Stafford. He's my nickel of the week. But how about you?
Yeah, and I'll be quick. It's the tight end room here in Carolina. This is a team that needs more production there.
Gotcha.
And they were bad on Sunday, man.
But we're going to get up out of here, man. This was fun. Let us know what you're thinking for next week's episode. But for this episode, addition to a real spill, it's been your boy Scott Proctor, that boy Ellis L. Williams. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out our other videos and don't forget to smack that subscribe button down below while you're at it. Also, for more great and original content, head right over to bvmsports.com.